As if the decorations at the retail stores didn't tell you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jesus season. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Yank Gunner. Jesus season indeed. And not too soon, let me tell you. If there was ever going to be a Jesus season, it was about time, and we got it. And this time of year certainly lends itself to the double entendre, to the pun. Here's the problem. Certain puns you do and people are like, wow, I didn't see that one coming. Like, there is no Jesus in December pun you can do that people don't see coming. You know what I mean? I guess there are ones you can do in April, but hopefully nothing opposite. As we know, this is more of a time of birth. That was a little something else. So, I guess there's the anyway. You know what? That's not the point. I am not a student of religion. I am a student of Arsenal, sort of, and I'm here to tell you that we are through to the semifinals of the League Cup, where we will have the easy task of facing either Spurs or United or Newcastle or Liverpool. So we could be facing Liverpool twice or Spurs. Would that be 3 times in January, or Manchester United 3 cup ties in January? Like it all looks a little tricky, but I'm much happier to be through than to be out. And I think we were handed what is traditionally sometimes referred to as a cracking cup tie. If you're always like, what's a cracking cup tie? What is that really? Isn't that just a good game? This was a cracking cup tie. It really was. And I'm excited to discuss it. This was probably more fun and more interesting than we maybe expected, and gives us some things to maybe get excited about. So we're going to look back on a game against Palace and look forward to a game against, it says here, Palace. Just weird how the quirk of the calendar times out. Maybe cover some of the latest news, as there's just a bit of news out there. And I will remind you, we did the instant reaction last night. Clive was on that. He will not be on today. So if you want your Clive, that's over there. We have an 80s history pod, and Paul and I did a breakdown of Thierry Henry's analysis of our attack and where we think he got it right and where we think there are maybe things that we slightly disagree with, or how we took that analysis. So that's all over there if you want to listen. Remember, you can use code 10nil for the rest of the month for new signups, and instead of $5, it's $2.50, which, that seems like a reasonable holiday gift to anyone new signing up. And we'll have some stuff for existing patrons as well as we get to the holidays. So here with me now is not Tim, nor Paul, nor Clive, all of whom were on earlier in the week. But today we rotate the squad for the League Cup. It's Phil. You can find him places and things with handles, but mostly he's the host of the Football Vision Podcast. Hello, Phil.
Oh, the Jakub Kiwior of the Arsenal Vision Podcast. Is that how I was just introduced?
What is the podcasting version of letting the ball go over your head? You know what, Phil? Nothing goes over your head because firstly, you're tall, and secondly, you have a deep understanding and knowledge of football. And I am glad that you are here to discuss this game with me. We will get to the highs, Jesus potentially, and lows, Jakub Kiwior potentially, of this game. First of all, let me just ask you, like I said, it's a cracking cup tie. Is that how you engage with it? Like, there is something about cup ties where, especially like a league cup tie, where you kind of go for it, but it's kind of not your priority. So everybody's not sure how to go into it, and it's mix and match lineups, and you get weird performances you don't expect. And sometimes you get an Ethan Nwaneri brace, and sometimes you get a Jesus hat trick, and you never know what's going to happen. Like, do you enjoy these kinds of occasions?
I think with the Carabao Cup in particular, you do get that a little bit because people don't really know what to make of it. Some people would prefer to throw everything at the Premier League and the Champions League, whereas some people now are maybe leaning towards, well, maybe we do need to win a trophy again under Mikel Arteta. So there's a bit of a split between the fan base, although it's always nice to see players that you don't normally see. And also, I think the Premier League, the churn of the Premier League can get quite exhausting. So just separating yourself from that a little bit can only be a good thing. And I enjoyed it. I mean, you see people that you don't always watch. We got some young players. We saw some fringe players. I don't know if it was so exciting as the scoreline suggested, but overall, I'm happy we won, and I can't really argue with being in a semi-final.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is a difficult one because I take your point that people have started to make this argument that this is a very important cup for us. And like, the last thing anybody wants to hear is the tedious relitigation of whether winning cups is good actually or not good actually. But let's relitigate it. Why not? Just real quick, because we'll fill time. I do get the theory of like, all right, it would be nice for this group to win something. Like, I absolutely get that. Trophies are trophies. I mean, obviously, we're getting a little bit of ridicule from rival fans because our manager pointed to the Community Shield as trophies. And whether you're inclined to ridicule that or just nod your head at it, or think he's just being a little bit clever, right, with a a question he didn't necessarily want to answer in the way people wanted it answered. I don't particularly care about that. But I think that answer leads to an important point, right? Which is trophies are important and you need to win them until you win them. And people say, well, no, not that one. You know what I mean? So I do think it would be great for this group to get the experience of a Wembley final, winning a trophy and hoisting it. Absolutely, of course. I don't believe that any disgruntled section of the fan base would feel sated by that in such a way where they would say, okay, now we can take a deep breath, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that's what people are suggesting, but I do think, if you look at Erik ten Hag, and I know this is a tired analysis and tired comparison, but I think it is apt. He won the FA Cup, and I'm sure that was a wonderful moment for United fans. He was there longer than he should have been, and the fact that he stayed into this season and had sway over transfer policy in the summer was a giant catastrophe for them. So I think I'm going to go with the two things can be true, which is starting to feel a little bit like the cliche of this podcast, but it is true that that day out would be special. We would have to beat some good teams to get there, so that would add to the specialness of it. And we would celebrate it, and it would be great. I just don't think it would move the needle on whether people feel this season is a success or not, based on what happens in the other two major trophies we're chasing, the Champions League and the Premier League. Do you think that long rambling screed makes sense in any way, shape, or form?
I think it makes sense, and the Erik ten Hag example is one way to look at it. But then you can say Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp kick-started their winning eras with a sort of Carabao Cup win, a League Cup win. So I think you can't underestimate silverware in any shape or form. And I think now, especially after having suffered the last couple of years, obviously we didn't get that close in the Champions League, but we've been so close in the Premier League. And during those two seasons, I would have been like, okay, tunnel vision. I don't care about the Carabao Cup. We've got bigger fish to fry. But now that we're in a semi-final, I want to win. I want to win this tournament. I think a potential game against Spurs in that as well just adds a little bit of spice to what could be a really satisfying trophy win for us. I think this group needs it. Just to have something on the CV, on the resume. I think Arteta probably needs it as well, just to keep that credit in the bank where it is. I'm not saying he's losing any of that credit, but I just think it would be a really good thing for this club. And again, reaffirms that we are moving in the right direction as opposed to stagnating or even dropping off from where we've been over the last couple of years. And it, even in contract talks, that could be a little, William Saliba, your contract's up in however many years, but we've just won the cup. So we are, winning stuff and we'd like to keep you here. Bukayo Saka would like to keep you here. So I think it would be a big day for the club, for Arteta, for the fans, for the players. Obviously there's a long way to go yet, and it could be a very spicy draw in the semi-final, whoever we get. I want to win it. I even at halftime yesterday, I was like, well, this is not a defeat I'd like to have to talk about again. So I'm in on this.
Yeah, I think there is a inverse analysis that works here too, Phil. And I find myself convinced by the things you're saying, but which is winning it may not feel like a culmination in any way, may not sate our appetite. But losing, not winning it, will absolutely become another stick to beat us with if the season isn't progressing into what it needs to be. And so it's one of these weird things where it's like, I don't know that winning it will serve as satisfaction in the absence of other things, but I know that not winning it will just become another tedious talking point of failure, which I think will be unfair, but it is what it is. And maybe my lack of connection to the League Cup is every club has its own history. We have a deep history with the FA Cup, and so I feel very connected to it. I don't think I've ever seen us win the League Cup, right? So, and I look at how we've approached it, especially in the Wenger years and some of the teams we put out. I mean, we went to a League Cup final that was one to forget, against Birmingham City. And is that Birmingham? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, Birmingham, and another one against Chelsea.
Yeah, that's right.
We lost as well.
Another one against Chelsea was where we used the young team, right? We used the kids essentially. That was the bust up at full time. And, I admire the way we approached the League Cup, and we got great memories of Chips Vela, right? Carlos Vela chipping people. And we had a lot of fun. We had the Reading 7-5 game, but I never connected to it as a priority because it was never treated that way, really. So I do think that to some extent, the degree to which you care about this cup is A, the degree to which you just want to shut people up and say we want a trophy, and B, how much you connect to the competition itself. I will say this, Mikel Arteta won the FA Cup. And Mikel Arteta won the FA Cup by beating Manchester City and Chelsea in the semifinal and final. And no one seems to point to that in any defense of anything we've done. And so, given that that is a major trophy in my view, just below, not just below, but below the Premier League and Champions League. But it's an important trophy, won in impressive fashion with not a great squad, relying on, some individual brilliance from Aubameyang, certainly, but over two heavily favored opponents. And it's just kind of forgotten history. And I realize it was a COVID era thing, so that has something to do with it. But there's definitely a part of me that's skeptical, given how little regard that is given, that this would be given more. But look, that's enough sort of navel gazing about should we care about this. We're in it. We should try to win it. I think it would be good for these players to do it. I think it would take just 1% stress off them, pressure off them of the critique that they face, which could be just enough to be a little bit more free in their actions, as they move through the season. If you're late in the rounds of the Champions League and you've already won a trophy this season and you feel just that little bit more secure in your position, like, I don't know. I think only good things come from winning it. And I know that losing a semifinal or final against United or Spurs or Liverpool or Newcastle, is just not going to feel good. So at this point, let's go effing win it. And to that point, I think there were a lot of people, Phil, that were frustrated by the lineup. I have very mixed feelings on this, but there was a sense of why are we chucking this cup? We can't afford to be chucking the cup. And I look at the lineup and I'm like, 85% of the people out there make over 150 or 200,000 pounds a week. It was a very changed lineup, but there are a lot of very experienced, talented, expensively priced players out there. The only academy kid really was Nwaneri, who everybody wanted starting in place of Odegaard when he was out injured. So yes, it was very rotated, but it wasn't just kids. And granted, Palace put out essentially their full strength Premier League team. So were you frustrated by that lineup, intrigued by it? How did you react to that?
No, I wasn't frustrated at all. We needed to make changes, and I think it's a good opportunity for some of those fringe players, for some of those young players to kind of make an impact and say, look, maybe I deserve a bit more of a look in the senior team, in the first team when we've been struggling a bit. So I can't really get on board with the frustrations. We need to play the squad. We need to use the squad. Some people needed a rest. And like you said, the first half was more a victim of rotation. I mean, 8 changes. It's normal that you lack fluency. There aren't any partnerships on the field. There isn't any chemistry. There's no rhythm. Some people are coming in cold. So that for me was a bigger issue with the changes themselves, not the actual decision to start certain players. And look, I think in terms of Nwaneri playing, I think we're all excited to see him. Marino's building his sort of stature and standing in the team. Sterling needed minutes. So for me, it was a necessary thing for Arteta to do. And regardless of Palace playing their full strength team, this was a team that should have done a bit better in my eyes. And for whatever reason, there were a few reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into, but it just didn't happen. You're on mute.
Naturally. I don't know why I even went on mute. One quick thing for me on the lineup, which is simply, I think that we want to have Sterling make an impact, and I think that we want Jesus to make an impact this season, right? Those are things that we feel we need. And I think we want to make sure that we don't run Saliba into the ground, that Gabriel is fully fit when he comes back playing and isn't playing through things. Declan Rice, obviously managing something. So it's like, if you can't call on Jorginho and you can't call on Jesus and you can't call on Sterling at home in a League Cup tie against Crystal Palace, you are functionally saying that these players are not really a part of the squad, because if you can't do it there, the stakes only get higher, right? They only get higher than that. So I think you have to call on them. And look, Leo Trossard he's either a starting first team player or he's the backup. I mean, but he's right there on the fringe. Thomas Partey has played right back in much bigger games than this. Urian Timber at center back. I mean, we can maybe talk about that a bit, but again, it's just all through the squad. these are players that we need to be able to trust. So it's not our strongest lineup, but it is a lineup filled with players that we need to be able to depend on in certain situations. And I guess the biggest argument you can make is changing this many can destabilize it, and maybe did. But, overall, I don't have a problem. So look, we get into the game. Palace is essentially full strength, except for an academy kid at right back.
Mm-hmm.
And before we really come to grips with it at all, they're ahead. And there's nothing I dislike more than really getting stuck into a player. Look, people don't like to hear it, and it's not pleasant, because I think sometimes if a player isn't good enough, everybody just kind of gets it. This was a really bad look for Kiwior in this moment. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've backed Kiwior much on this pod. Like I have always thought he's maybe just a level below. But the thing I've also thought is, as a fourth choice player in a couple positions, that's probably as good as you're going to find, right? I mean, if Tomiyasu's fit and Calafiori's fit and Zinchenko's fit and one or two others I'm probably not thinking of, right? He's probably fourth choice in most positions, or third choice. And I just don't think you're going to find a much better level than that. I think the problem is when you have a third choice or a fourth choice player, they're going to cost you a bit, but you can hide them a little if they're in the normal group, right? So if you had Saliba, Timber, Calafiori, and Kiwior, something like that, you can probably get through that game. And we've seen us get through games like that. The issue is when you've got a fullback playing center back next to him, and you got a guy who hasn't played football at all in 6 months on the other side of him. That's where it gets tricky. So this is just an individual error. He doesn't keep his eye on the ball. He tries to head it without looking at it, and it goes over him, and then he gets done for strength. I think more than pace, he gets done for strength because he does catch up. It's a bad individual moment, but I think it's exacerbated by the fact that he wasn't ensconced in a very comfortable back four where he could be a little more protected.
I agree, but I still think he was shocking for the goal. It
wasn't his only shocking moment either, to be fair.
I've tried to be patient with him, but in my eyes, he hasn't really kicked on at all since joining, which is weird because he seemed to tick a lot of boxes profile-wise and was very highly rated in Italy. Both Milan clubs wanted him, and we've seen numerous links back to Italian clubs over the last 2 or 3 windows. It just looked right. We signed a left-footed defender who could play centrally in a 3, left-sided centre-back in a 3, left-back. He's got good passing range and what looked like the ability to be that covering player when our left-back inverts or pushes forward. But I just can't escape how timid he looks on the pitch. Weak at times. And I think opposition players know they can target him, which is never a good look for a defender. I think if people move to your side with the idea of getting in or getting something off you, then that's always a worrying sign. And I called him out on socials yesterday. Some people said I was being quite harsh, that it was just one mistake, but I don't think it's been just one mistake. I think of the underhit back pass against Bournemouth.
It's not just-
I think of him being caught out of position against Liverpool. He was caught out of position against Fulham. He got bullied twice by Artetta last night in that passage of play that led to the goal. And he even lost his national team place earlier this season after breaking the Polish record for consecutive starts. I think he made 27 consecutive starts for Poland, but he was dropped for making too many mistakes. So I think he can be serviceable for us. Like you said, third or fourth choice at centre-back, third or fourth choice at left-back. You can always make excuses about him not being able to build a partnership with anybody. He comes in and out of the team quite regularly. He doesn't get a chance to build up any rhythm. But with him, for me, it's a feeling. I don't like the feeling he transmits on the pitch, and I would be surprised if his teammates do as well. So, look, I can't go in too hard on him because I think he's doing a job, but he hasn't really kicked on as I would have hoped or expected him to do when we signed him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes. If you really look at his CV, there's a lot of mistakes on it. There's a lot of goals conceded on it. Important ones this season, by the way. Last season, he made some mistakes during that run where he was at left back, but we were playing bad teams and blowing them away, and we didn't get hurt. I mean, one thing that I'm going to bring up now because I just think you can't help but look at the season we're having through the lens of this, and Arsenal's 5th game in a row conceding less than 0.4 expected goals. So 5 consecutive games where we've conceded less than 0.4 expected goals. Other than Everton, we don't have a clean sheet in that run. And we conceded 2 last night. So I think one thing that has sometimes happened, I think there was a game against Bournemouth actually last season where Kiwior went over to the touchline for a ball that looked like it was going out for a throw. He decides to keep it in for reasons I can't explain, runs himself out to the touchline and falls over, and then Bournemouth are in, and they just squander a clear chance, right? Again, not trying to kill him, just a point that he didn't get punished. This season, it just feels like if you make an error, we're going to get punished. We're going to concede a goal. And, there are other scenarios where Mateta has that run off his shin or doesn't get it controlled right or hits it too close to Raya, but he doesn't. Either way, I agree with you. I don't think he's at the level. I'm just not sure what I think you're going to get from backups to backups at any level. I don't know too many teams that look great when those players are in. I mean, you look at City, they're playing a few backups at a couple positions and it's falling completely apart. They were playing that guy with the double-barreled last name out of their academy at center back. And he's a train wreck, right? He's just not able to do it. I don't think Aiden Heaven is ready. So you're in, I don't think Karakuri is ready. Is that his name, right?
Maldini Kakuri, yeah.
Maldini, yeah. He's got the name for it, but I don't think he's ready talent-wise. So you're in a difficult situation there. I think, and Clive has pointed this out, I think the biggest issue I have with Kiwior is just he lets situations take him over instead of taking over situations. He is reactive in his defense. And while I think he looks better as the outside back in a 3 formation, I know we don't play a 3, but you know what I mean? When he gets to play fullback and he sort of tucks in and he's the outside in a 3 in buildup, or when he has that extra, just he's not right in the middle of the pitch, right down the middle, I think he looks safer. This was very much center back in a 2, right, with a traditional fullback out on the left, a guy next to him who is also not a center back, and he lets situations dominate him. And I think that is really the biggest thing I see different, especially from Gabriel, who's so proactive in how he deals with situations. And I just think Kiwior is way too reactive,
But also Gabriel is strong enough to handle those individual battles. Sometimes when it's one-on-one with Kiwior in the wide areas or running back towards our own goal, I just feel a bit nervous. And again, I know that it's impossible to find another Gabriel who's willing to play second or third choice to Gabriel. So we need to look at this in terms of a squad position, a hierarchical position. But he just looks a bit like a sixth former in England, like 16, 17 years old, quite tall, but hasn't grown into their body yet. And I don't really trust him. So I still think he has a role to play here. And obviously he's fit, which we can say is not the case for many of our fullbacks or defenders at the moment, which is always helpful. But moving forward, I just don't see that he will be happy with the role he's playing here. And I think Arsenal will maybe think that in the summer, if there's an offer from a Napoli, a Milan and Inter, there might be a chance to move on and maybe sign somebody else.
I just have sympathy with the club on this one in the sense, though, that, if we had bought another center back, people would be rolling their eyes out of their head. Like, really? We bought a fullback and a center back this summer? Like, what about the attack? That's how it would have been received. And yet, any Gabriel or Saliba injury at this point very squarely brings Kiwior into the team. Tomiyasu's not fit. Calafiori's not fit. Those are the 2 players who could probably be center backs. Timber got a chance there last night, and frankly, I don't know that he looks that comfortable there himself. I don't see him as a center back, although I think he can do it. So we're an injury away from Kiwior being a big player, much as 2 seasons ago we were an injury away from Tomiyasu being a big player. Where was he? Injured, and so it was Rob Holding. And this feels like, look, not to make it all about Tomiyasu, but at the end of the day, that's a player who would have been super handy in a lot of situations. He's not there. And as a result, players like Kiwior are way more in the spotlight than they would be otherwise. So it is what it is. This is the kind of thing you get from players who are this deep on the depth chart at this point, litigating whether he's usable or unusable, which are sort of hyperbole anyway, sort of ignores the fact that I don't think the plan is to use him much if other players are available. All right. Well, look, there's a lot of positives to get to other than that Kiwior goal that he allows. The first half itself wasn't entirely positive, but there were some sparks. And you know what? What really struck me, Phil? This game was much more open and a little more back and forth. And so it was more fun to watch in some respects. I thought it felt like shit because we didn't have control. I actually really like when we have control. I think I feel much more at ease and comfortable. But because we didn't have control, there was more back and forth. Sterling showed in this game that he can cause problems. And there is very much a sliding doors version of this game where Raheem Sterling scores one of those two chances from the cross. And Dean Henderson does not save his free kick. And it's a 2-goal dynamic performance from Sterling that's completely changed the narrative on him. Instead, one of them is really well saved. One of them is just slightly overhit. I think he does well to get a second shot on from that position. The free kick is well saved, and it's Jesus' night, and we'll come to him in a moment. So do you see, I mean, look, end product is important, but I think performances when a player is low are almost more important. And I saw Sterling, who, by the way, was tracking back and actually doing the work defensively, which is something we needed to see, but really showed that against teams that want to sit a little deeper, he can hurt them. Kind of made me wish he had come on against Everton, to be honest. But so how do you view that performance? And do you agree with my sort of sliding doors analysis that there's another world where those goals go in, and this becomes a very important part of Sterling's journey at Arsenal, you know?
Of course, those are the margins. Those are always the margins you operate with in football. Inches, millimeters, one good save, a deflection here. That can really change the narrative of a performance. I do have a little bit of sympathy for him because yes, he was good last night, I thought, but also we haven't really seen him enough in the first team. Kind of using the same caveat that we did with Kiwior, he's kind of in and out, never really coming into our best 11 or our strongest 11 because he simply doesn't get a look in because Bukayo Saka is so much better than everybody else. So again, he was playing with a different right back, a different 8, a different striker. Whereas if that's Timber at right back, Odegaard as the left 8, and then Havertz up front, is that a potentially different performance from him? Either way, I thought he was fine. Showed some good bits of control. I liked some of his movement in behind. You're right. I wanted to point out his defensive sort of work rate off the ball. There were even times where he was further back than Partey or Timber in his what was it, 60-minute cameo. So yeah, I mean, are there things to build on? Probably yes. I think obviously the goal or him scoring a goal changes the narrative a bit more, but I don't think we learned a lot new about him. I think he can play when we need him to, an hour here, half an hour there, maybe to rotate the team against weaker opposition in the cup. I think he'll play against United, for example, in the FA Cup, maybe if Bukayo Saka's looking for another rest. But again, I just see him as someone who will play a bit of a squad role this year. I don't see him usurping anybody on the left or right, but it was nice to see that he can contribute if we need him to contribute. And maybe on the off chance we struggle against another deep block, I would like to see him given a go, because I think Clive made the point he doesn't really do much anymore in his sort of in the September of his career, but he does love a give and go. And I think give and goes against the low block can be really, really dangerous. So whether it's crosses to the back post or those tight little combination sort of passes and moves in the corner of the box, I think that can be very useful. But yeah, nice to see that he can contribute. I think it was a good night for him, if not a great one. But yeah, I don't think he was the main story of the game for sure.
No, it's just the case that you see what we kind of suspected, which is there's a player in there who can still be effective at hurting compact defenses, low block defenses. And given that we face the lowest defensive line height, I think, in the league, maybe even in Europe, it makes sense why we'd want to add a player like that. And I've been very critical of him because he hasn't done just the basic block and tackle, run back and cover for your fullback stuff that you have to do if you're going to play. And I don't want to hear, oh, you only have to do that for Mikel Arteta. No, you have to do it. You can't just walk back and watch players run past you. I'm not saying you have to do the Martinelli and sprint back and take the ball off someone and be heroic defensively. I'm saying you just have to track back. And he wasn't doing that in some games. In this game, because he did that, I think it ticks a box of like, okay, maybe I can trust you to do enough of that we can deploy you to try to break down these low blocks. And I'll be curious to see if he gets more minutes coming soon, because I think this was a very encouraging performance from a player who really hasn't had much. And there was a narrative going into this game, well, if he doesn't start this game, it really is over for him. Well, he did start, and I do think he did enough things. You just got to build him back up, right? This was base camp. He did enough things in this League Cup tie to show that he should get another chance to climb the mountain a little more, and that's a positive. There's another player who got to start, and that is Ethan Nwaneri. I couldn't help, Phil, but watch Ethan Nwaneri and think, if Arsene Wenger was still our manager, this is a player who would be learning his trade off the right, that he would be a wide forward. Not for his future, but at this stage of his development. Mikel loved to take players who became interior players and play them on the wing to kind of learn the game from that position, see the game from that position. And the reason I say this is, I think he can beat just about anybody. He's so good getting around players. He uses his body well. He's got good close control. He's got a really good burst away from people. I don't know that the instincts he has yet for when to release the ball, when to play people in, are completely honed yet. And that's understandable, right? I mean, that's about more playing time, more automatisms with your teammates. Also, is a very changed team. I don't think he looked bad by any means. I think he looked good. But to me, he looked like a wide forward who'd been put in the middle of the park, in the sense that he wanted to carry it a lot. He wanted to beat players a lot. He wanted to try to get himself available for a shot or a big eye-catching, pass to create something. And I love those instincts. I just don't know if the timing and the tempo of them was quite right. We really saw that dramatically, of course, when Odegaard came on, and the way some of the timing of passes and understanding of runs was changed. So what do you think of that idea? The idea that he's good, he looked good, he looks at the level, but maybe not at the level in that specific zone of the pitch to be regularly playing against Premier League opposition.
Yeah, I thought he was a bit unlucky to be taken off yesterday. Purely through squad seniority, he is the easiest one to hook at halftime. But otherwise, I thought he looked sharp on the ball. He was doing his defensive work. There was some great touches in tight areas, some composure on the ball that I really loved watching. At halftime, I saw Odegaard coming on. He was stripped off and ready to go. I would have been fine with Marino coming off instead. But again, I understand why
It's
it
redux of
happened.
the Everton game, right? It's the Everton
Yeah.
game redux. Like, you need a goal, keep on the two attacking eights. Mikel does not seem to want to do that. That's just not how he sees things right now.
Yeah, he prefers the balance, which again, I understand why, and it's still good experience for him either way. He's still finding his way into that position. He's learning how to receive the ball, where to receive the ball, and that particular position, that particular role, more than most, because you're following in the footsteps of Martin Odegaard, is about understanding what it takes to be a reference point. There is a huge amount of responsibility that you have to take on in that role, whether it's your passing through the lines, your ability to create something, where you receive the ball on the edge of the area, and how quickly you can manipulate it or find somebody else. He'll get there. Players come and go. Some make it, others don't. But I really believe in his talent, and what I'm seeing with my eyes tells me we have something exciting here. What I see now is that we've got a responsibility to keep him kind of simmering away in the slow cooker, which is what we're seeing now. Yes, he would have been disappointed to come off yesterday, and I was quite disappointed to see him come off. But it's fine. It didn't happen yesterday. There were a lot of changes in the team. I don't think he was being found enough. There was just a bit of balance missing from the overall 11 during that first half. So it's not an individual issue. But I don't think it's anything to be too upset about. Overall, the changes proved in the end to have made a difference with Odegaard coming on, Saliba coming on. But yeah, I can't sit here and say that he was amazing, but also I don't think Partey was amazing at right back. And I'm not sure Sterling was giving him enough width in the first half. He was more coming inside. So I don't think he had those or that ability to make connections on the pitch, if that makes sense.
I think that does make sense. And I'm not, by the way, like, I am not diminishing the quality that we see from him. And I'm not saying he's not a midfielder. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, a lot of the attributes I see looking the most polished and the most ready right now are the attributes that I think could be just as effective as a wide forward, and some of the attributes that still need refining are the midfielder attributes, and specifically that like playmaker midfielder attribute of just there is a thing in midfield where it's not just can you make the pass, can you control the ball, it's tempo and timing and knowing when to do it. There were times when like he'd beat a man and he'd carry it and be like, yes, now you can release the pass, but then he'd beat another man and then turn and come back and beat another man, and it's like there's an amount of time you can't hold the ball in that zone. You know what I mean? Because at this level, the defenders will get their spacing back in order and, figure out where they need to stand. Like you have a split second where they've lost their shape and you can play it. And if you don't play it, then it's gone. So there is definitely a player bubbling under the surface there that is going to be huge for us. I just think we've totally lost our minds, by the way, about what 17 is and what you should expect at 17. And part of the reason we've done that is he's done it to us by being really good. He's coming. Whether he's there just yet to be the playmaking 8 in this system, that just might be a little bit further away. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Odegaard has 7 or 8 years on him, which is crazy because Odegaard's still a very young player. It's taken him, 25 years old is yeah, exactly. Last contract. But the way I see Nwaneri, obviously going back to your point about him playing wide, the club prioritized his development and his inclusion in the first team over Fabio Vieira this season, which I think speaks volumes. If we had both of those options to, let's say we didn't have Sterling and we had to choose Nwaneri or Fabio Vieira to play on the right in the Premier League, I think a lot of people would go towards Nwaneri, which I think says a lot. And he'll get there. We need to keep building him up, keep him simmering away. There were a lot of really good things he did yesterday, some not so good things, but overall, he's a really exciting player, and I'm sure we'll see more of him in the coming weeks and months. And I've got no doubt that in the very near future, he'll be a key player for us, which is crazy again to think about for somebody so young.
Okay. Well, I think that's fair. Last point before we get to Jesus, because obviously like we're way late getting to him. And there's a couple other things also in this game that I want to say. Just like so happy for Tyranny that he got a start, that he got to play in the win. He should have had an assist to Sterling, of course. David Ornstein, like read the room, mate. We don't need he's surplus to requirements and going to go right at full time after his first start for us forever in a cup win. But, it is a reminder that this is more of a swan song than a rebirth. The only thing I will say, I certainly think we can let Tyranny move on, because even if you have great affection for the player, we know fitness is a concern, and we already have too many players that we factor into our plan that don't stay fit. Like Tyranny needs to go somewhere where he can play regularly at this stage of his career. And, I wish him obviously the best, an easy player to root for, an easy player to like. And I'm glad he got this moment. And I think everybody who was there really enjoyed it. It is the case though, that we saw something different, which is Tyranny playing a more traditional fullback role. And it sure looked like it helped Trossard, for example. It sure looked like the left-sided wide forward all of a sudden wasn't getting chalk on his boots. He was a playmaker. He was the playmaking left 8 more than Marino. And that was an interesting development. Now, you could say, look, that's not what we want to do. We want Martinelli getting chalk on his boots, and we want Calafiori having the freedom to roam into the half space at the top of the box, because he can devastate there in a way that you can't ask Tyranny to. So we just flipped that dynamic. But if you're going to ask me, would I rather have my fullback taking on playmaking responsibility and potential secondary goal scoring responsibility in the left half space, or my forward? I think I'd prefer my forward, but we know what that does to the structure stability. So any quick thoughts? Not so much on Tyranny. We all know, it's all been said. We know where that's going, and I'm glad he got this moment. But on the impact of a more traditional fullback pushing Trossard into more interesting positions than we often see that player taking up.
I think it's a really good point, and I didn't mind it at all, actually. I know we feel quite committed to this inverted thing, but it did give us a glimpse into what a more direct attacking fullback can offer at times. I know the sample size is ridiculously small. Obviously, you need to take the opposition into account, but we spoke about Odegaard and Saliba changing the dynamics of this game. Sorry. But Tierney's running during the early part of the second half also helped significantly. And like you said, he should have had an assist with the Sterling chance. And I thought it was interesting that when he went off, Miles Lewis-Skelly came on and played a very similar role. He was keeping the width, pushing forward instead of tucking inside, because we knew that Palace were vulnerable down that side. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. This was his first start for Arsenal since May 2023. His first start for anybody since June the 19th, when he got injured playing for Scotland. He looked good. It almost felt like we went back in time watching him gallop up and down the left flank, overlapping, crossing. And you mentioned the Ornstein exclusive there, which I thought was very funny, the timing, but it's clear that he's not part of this club's future anymore. I think he's moved on. We've moved on. And I think he's had his eye on Celtic for, the best part of 12 to 18 months now. And I'd be amazed if he doesn't end up there this summer. I think there will be interested teams in the Premier League, especially on a cut price deal or even a free transfer. But for me, it just, the Celtic reunion just makes so much sense. I think he's happier there. And, I was really pleased for him to get that moment. He's such a strong, committed professional as well, which I think people can appreciate. There was no bad-mouthing the club, bad-mouthing Arteta when he was at Real Sociedad. A credit to him for that performance and also for his performance last night. And yeah, I think it did open our eyes maybe to a different type of fullback, because we've been so used to Zinchenko, Calafiori, Miles Lewis-Skelly coming in, Tomiyasu playing a different role, Kiwior playing a different role. And we do have one on the books, although not for much longer, in Nuno Tavares, who's actually leading Europe for assists. I think he's got 8, which is a bit absurd. But it does show you that there might be a future for this player or this type of player to come in and have an impact at Arsenal, as opposed to everyone just doing the same kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think we've stretched the limits on when it is right to get into the Gabriel Jesus of this game, and we're going to do that. But how would it be fair of me to bring up Gabriel Jesus before I've given you the opportunity to give your business to 4 great brands? It wouldn't be fair. You would be like, I can't even enjoy the Jesus analysis because you haven't given me the chance to hear about brands that might be relevant to me and important to me. And so I will do my duty now out of a sense of obligation and love for you. And so we will try to get through this relatively quickly. Bear with me. I know 4 is a lot, but you know what? Like we're going to talk about Gabriel Jesus, and that's certainly worth the wait, I would think. So we'll start with NordVPN. NordVPN is an easy one because it's the one most people ask me about. NordVPN is a way to watch videos that you simply can't watch in your location normally. So whether it's match highlights of the day, or whether it's geolock videos on social media, whether it's watching your subscription for a football match, like when I'm in the UK and I want to watch Premier League, I just VPN back to the US and I can watch all my NBC stuff. So it is a great way to watch stuff you can't watch where you are normally. You can even sign up for streaming services that aren't usually priced a certain way in your region, price them that way, and then just VPN to watch them. You can use it on Mac, PC, Android, Apple, one click. It also has threat protection. And as football fans, given the links we have to watch sometimes, definitely worth having. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And Manscaped. Manscaped is, it's just, here's the thing, right? They just make great products. Like, there are brands that you need or you don't need or you care about or you don't care about. The one thing that I really think is if I'm going to give my business to a brand, I want there to be quality in what they do, right? So if I'm going to buy a shaver for my privates, I want it to be a good quality shaver. If I'm going to buy a shaver for my face, I want it to be good quality. Every single product I've used, whether it's the lawnmower, whether it's the weed whacker, whether it's the Chairman Pro, the quality of Manscaped products is really, really good. And fundamentally, that's what we want to know, right? I mean, yeah, we want value and we want things to be convenient, but like we've all done it, right? We bought something cheap off like AliExpress or something, and then you're like, well, you ever heard it's the Wish version of something? It's like, well, that's just, I bought it because it was cheap, and it turns out it's cheap for a reason. It's crap, right? Manscaped makes great products. The Chairman Pro shaves your face, smooth or to stubble. It has multiple heads. It has a pivoting head. It has 75 minutes of battery life. It works in the water. It has a locking head. It's for travel. It I mean, you can take it for a week and not even charge it, and it works great. And you can use it in the shower if you want, so you don't have messy cleanup. It is a great way to shave your face. I recommend it. I use it. I think you will love it. It has skin-safe technology. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that's as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping. 20% off free shipping. That's good. With the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Do it now. And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. I have had people tell me recently they've signed up for BetterHelp, and it's been helpful. And that's all I can ask for. Therapy is valuable. I recently got some news that's got me a little stressed out and upset. And I'm getting back into therapy because I just want to manage it better. I don't want it to come out, when I deal with my kids, when I deal with my wife, when I deal with the podcast, right? I want to be able to be me. But when those things are weighing on you, you need help. I need help and I'm getting it. And I recommend that if you feel that way, you should do it because there's nothing wrong with needing help. Life is complicated and hard. And BetterHelp is a way to access therapy without having to get in the car and drive to an office and drive back and make the time and finding a therapist. And I don't even know where to find a therapist, and it can be more expensive. And I don't necessarily feel comfortable in the office. You can do this camera off. It's an affordable, accessible way to get therapy. BetterHelp is there. There it is. Yeah. Visit BetterHelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. There is no shame in needing help. And I just want to say, advertisement aside, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. But if you are not, you are loved, you are cared for. There are people there for you, and get help if you need it. Last but not least, if you want to build an e-commerce site, Shopify is the way to do it. I've built e-commerce sites with Shopify. Can't recommend it highly enough because if you're going to ask people to shop with you, you need to have a website that looks professional. You want to make your art. You want to make your merch. You want to make your product. That's what you're an expert at. You're not an expert at e-commerce. So Shopify takes that off your plate. You can put your products on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and all the places, right? They manage your cart. Hey, you didn't check out. Do you want to check out? Hey, do you want to add this to your cart? All the stuff that makes the website feel professional. They can help you with the tax and shipping stuff as well. So you don't have to be an expert in that. Basically, it is a way to build a website that reflects the professionalism needed to sell the great products that you make. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. Phil, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Sometimes you just got to do that. And that's just how that is. So we can finally talk about Jesus. A conversation that at this time of the year may come up, but in this case, it comes up about football. Look, it goes without saying that Odegaard coming on changed the game. But someone's still got to put the ball in the back of the net. And if anything has been summarizing Arsenal's challenges recently, it's just, I don't think it's a paucity of good attacking play. I don't think it's a paucity of opportunities. I mean, Odegaard himself had a hat trick of opportunities at the weekend. Someone's got to stick the ball in the back of the net. Who would have guessed that the man who would do it 3 times in this game is Gabriel Jesus? There are some people that believe confidence isn't a thing, that reliance on confidence and the mention of confidence is a lazy analysis or a shorthand for other things that are observable because confidence isn't measurable. If you don't think confidence is a thing, you have some explaining to do. You have some explaining to do because watching Gabriel Jesus after he scored that goal, it was like he put on a different suit, a different personality. He came to life. He received one ball in the channel in the box. I think it was from Marino. Just a little 3-yard pass in the box with a defender behind him. He was posting up and he pirouettes on it, kills the defender and fires off a first-time shot that's well saved. That was instinctive. It was brilliant. It was a man who wanted to take on the moment, right? The thing with Jesus that has been really frustrating is just he has shied away from the moment. One of the things that sticks out to me about his goal is he doesn't go down for the penalty. He wants to take on that moment, and he does it, and he gets the reward. And Phil, he got the reward again and again and again. And finally, now I can own that I picked him as my breakout player because obviously here he goes. He's going to break out. I knew it all along. I knew it was going to take a while, but this could be a very, very significant moment. I know there have been false dawns with this player, but he is just 27. This isn't some 34-year-old who's having a Indian summer. This is a 27-year-old who has talent in his boots if he just plays like this. And he didn't do it against League 3 opposition or something. I mean, so I want to take it to mean something. What's your thought of that second half performance from Jesus and maybe a little on the potential implications for it?
Really fun. I said that watching Tierney was
Mm.
almost like going back in time, but that second half performance was like watching the early Gabriel Jesus for Arsenal, which is a player that we'd love to see more often. He was brilliant, and like you said, it almost was like a snap of the fingers, and he was changed. And I thought he took all three goals brilliantly, but the first one especially, that's not easy to do when people are waiting to get on your back. If that drops a centimeter wide or the covering defender gets there in time, I think there might have been a moment where his heart sort of dropped into his stomach and thought, "Oh God, is this going in? Have I just messed up another chance here?" But that moment to me signified that there is still a player in here who can contribute. And obviously the three goals were great, the finishes were great, but there were other bits in his performance that encouraged me as well. There was, technical security, touches, turns, strength to hold the defender off. He looked sharp all of a sudden. There looked to be a burst of pace. He looked a bit slimmer than I've seen him recently. I think he's got quite heavy in terms of the thigh muscles and the sort of the broadness of the shoulders. He looked sharp again. He looked like he could get away from people.
Should we give a little nod to Clive with the cheekbone reference? Because those
The
cheekbones were quite
cheekbones,
pointy last night.
they could cut glass, those things. Just it was nice to see him enjoying his football, because too often he seems so burdened by it all. And I think for various reasons, whether that's injury, whether that's the squad just moving beyond him a little bit, whether that's not feeling super confident in himself in terms of his body, but he just seemed so peripheral and lacking confidence every time he came onto the pitch as a substitute, whether he was starting. Although recently I think we have seen some signs that he was maybe getting back to at least a usable level, but I don't need him to be that Gabriel Jesus of August to December 2022. Pre-Qatar World Cup, Gabriel Jesus is gone. I don't think we'll ever get him back, but what we need him to be is serviceable. And too often this season, he has not been serviceable. But if he can find a level based on this performance, if he can use that as a springboard to offer us something, whether that's as a central striker, a left winger, or a right winger, we would be delighted with that. I promise you. That's what we need from him now. Whether his long-term future is at the club, I'm not sure. I still think there are big question marks over that, but ultimately it doesn't matter now, because we need him now. We need him here. We need him now. We need him contributing. And it was just so nice to see a player who I have a lot of love and affection for look like he's enjoying his football again. And football confidence is such a funny thing. That one goal goes in and you could see the weight just disappearing from his shoulders, really. The way he was
Yeah.
moving, the way he was combining with people, the way he was willing to welcome the ball with a defender on his back. Too often he would get it in the wide areas, pass it back, and that's it. But yesterday we saw the old glimpses of the old Gabriel Jesus anyway, and I just love the conviction with how he took all of those goals. And yeah, really, really pleased for him. And let's be honest, it's put him in a pretty good position to potentially start on Saturday.
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, and we've seen little glimpses of him this season. It's not like he hasn't done anything.
Agreed.
I mean, he hasn't done anything in terms of, like scoring goals in the league or anything. But I think we've seen glimpses where we've been like, oh, that player could be usable. But as Tim would point out, it'd be there and then it's gone again. You see it and then it's gone again. But this feels like the kind of thing that can keep him going. He was asked after the game, and you could see the chip on his shoulder in some of his comments, because he's like, sometimes maybe I assist or I do well, but because I didn't score the goal, then people say they want their striker to score goals. And like everybody lambastes him for that. But like they forget, yeah, he did have a really good assist to, who was it at the back? Oh no,
Saka.
to Saka. Yeah. I mean, and everyone forgets that because he didn't score in that game. But like, we've seen other players screw up that ball across as recently as just this past weekend. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there may be something here. I'm still prepared to believe there's something here. We saw flashes in the preseason, then he got hurt again. Then we've seen some flashes, but he hasn't scored. This is a hat trick of well-taken goals. And the thing that I like about the goals is they're all on instinct first time, right? he doesn't cut back and cut back again. He doesn't try to dribble the goalkeeper 4 times to get himself a shot. He takes them early in an instinct. The first goal in particular, like, that's a very assured finish from a situation where he's very entitled to go down and try to get a penalty because a player slides between his legs, but he skips over it. Like, that's a player who's like, I want to get a goal. I want to score. You know, maybe it's the baby thing. I don't know, right? I want to score a goal in this game and put the ball under my shirt and make the baby gesture. But like, he did those things. He totally transformed what he looked like. I think also just the understanding with Odegaard. He made a comment after the match. I said to Martin, I'm going to make the run. Just play the pass. I promise I'll be there. And talk about sliding doors moments also feel like maybe, and I don't know because there's a dragged leg, but maybe one of those goals is offside, right?
I think the second one is,
The second one. And it's kind of like Martinelli, right? Martinelli provides the assist for the winner against Fulham. But it's offside by an inch. And instead of getting the credit for an amazing cross, he's getting pelters for the offside. Jesus, there's no VAR. He gets the second goal. Now we're winning. Now he's on fire. Now he's getting all the praise. Like, it's these little margins that can totally turn how you're thought of in a season, how you think of yourself in a season. He goes on and gets the third. He did show great understanding with Odegaard. He was in the positions you want him in. You know what I mean? He wasn't at the halfway line. He was getting forward and doing things on instinct. I think people have been overly harsh on Kai Havertz, but let's face it, he's been a bit shot shy this season. I think some of the shot numbers are unfair because the period where Odegaard was out, I just think he had a really difficult role in a team that was not clicking at all. I still rate Kai Havertz, but I think there is a world where Jesus can give us something different in play, and he can play off the left if we're worried about that side, and he can play through the middle. He can play with Kai Havertz. You mentioned it, so I'll just ask you, it's Palace again at the weekend. He just ruined their back line. Like, is it too reductive to just say, run it back?
I don't think so. I mean, we don't know the condition of Havertz at the moment. Maybe he's not ready to start. I know he was on the bench yesterday, right? So maybe in an emergency he would have been able to come on and help us. But I don't think he's done his chances any harm. Well, obviously, you can't with a hat trick. It's the opposite. You only put yourself further towards starting. So I just think with Jesus, he's such an emotional guy, an emotional player who wears his heart on his sleeve. And I think the highs are really high and the lows are really low with him. There's never really any middle ground. He's either the best player for Brazil at Copa America or he's getting sent off and then punching the VAR screen when he's walking off, and crying in the tunnel. So he is so invested, involved, and I think it's obvious when he's not feeling 100% right, whether that's mentally, whether that's physically. We can't underestimate the effect of all these knee injuries, by the way, because how many of us wake up in the morning and we've got sore joints and knees and whatever, let alone professional players who have to run around and get kicked for 90 minutes twice or 3 times a week. So we have to take that into account. But I've just felt a bit of a disconnect with him recently, mentally and also with the team. He hasn't quite found his role. He hasn't quite found his position. But last night, I think we saw it again, that he does have a role to play. And I certainly wouldn't have any issues with him starting again on Saturday. I think you're absolutely right about him being in positions that we want him to be in, where he can cause damage, that he's not scared to have defenders close by, that he can feel confident enough to beat them. I mean, a couple of those touches in the penalty area were brilliant. I mean, that one from it was the save from Henderson. That's an unbelievable save from the toe poke after the turn. That could have gone anywhere, and it just went wide into the side netting. So, it's just nice to see somebody enjoying themselves, enjoying their football. Yes, it's one game. Yes, it's a Carabao Cup tie. But if you can use this as a springboard or a platform to really contribute to this team, especially now during the Christmas period where we need people, I'm absolutely here for it. And yeah, just really, really pleased for him, because I think it's been a difficult few months. He needed it, and in the context of the game, we needed that as well. So yeah, super pleased.
Yeah, and I think it's also, by the way, this is going to sound ridiculous maybe, but it's something I'm saying, so that checks all the boxes. I think it's a good night for Odegaard in the sense that he was coming in for a little bit of criticism post having his baby for his performances. And like, there couldn't have been a more black and white example of a player coming on and turning a game. It's Jesus's goals, but it's Odegaard's influence. I love the pass for the third. People might say it's an easy one. He gives Palace the eyes. He's not looking at it. He kind of conceals it, seeing Jesus making that run when like I don't see him looking at that. He's obviously scanned and he knows it's there before he plays the ball, and it's the perfect ball, and it's perfectly timed. Again, back to timing, right? If you hold that a bit longer and take a dribble, Jesus is offside because he crosses the halfway line. So he was brilliant, and that's good because I think we go nowhere without a brilliant Odegaard, and he was brilliant. So that was good. There was an Arsenal player who I think people were impressed with, especially second half, and I didn't connect to the performance. So I just want to quickly get your thought on it, and then we can talk quickly about Eddie scoring a goal because that was nice for him, and then look ahead briefly to the draw and Palace of the weekend. Get out of here, but Mikel Marino. I've got some comments from people who've messaged me like, "Oh, wasn't he good in the second half?" I didn't connect to his performance. Now, that doesn't mean he wasn't good. We all watch football a little differently, and we have things that are catching our eye and in the emotion of the moment, right? Sometimes you're really caught up in what's going on in the game, and certain aspects of it tactically or performance-wise bypass you. And he's someone who I think just kind of bypassed me in this game. And I have to admit, I'm yet to be convinced of the level there. And I realize, he was injured. He's just come in. He's played with a lot of different changed sides, and he's coming to terms with the pace of play and how we play. But did I miss something in that second half that you want to call out? Because for me, it was it's not like I think he stunk the place out. I didn't connect to the performance.
I think he definitely improved in the second half. I don't know if he played a huge role in us turning the game around, for example, but I did like a few things that he did in possession. I think out of possession as well, there were a few challenges, some second balls, some 50-50s that you would expect from him. That is essentially his USP. So I'd be a bit disappointed if he wasn't doing those kind of things on the pitch. I thought he dropped a bit deeper, actually, with Tierney able to run on the overlap and later Miles Lewis-Skelly as well. That really afforded Trossard space to come inside. And it took him off the touchline. So Trossard was able to occupy those areas that maybe the left eight would typically be occupying. So it just gave Marino a chance to drop deeper and play in a bit more of a pivot with Jorginho, I think, as opposed to him being a more box crasher, someone on the edge of the box that we've maybe become used to seeing. So that maybe showed a nice appreciation for the game state, what the game needed in that moment, how best he could support those around him, which was nice to see. I think he's obviously an intelligent player, so that, again, that's not something I'm looking out for because I know he's got that in his locker. I don't think he was incredible by any means, but I just think slowly, week by week, he's finding the physical level. You can see him looking a bit more comfortable with his teammates. I think from set pieces, he always looks dangerous. I did enjoy Palace doing the Monaco 3 men forward thing, like it makes a difference. It doesn't make any difference, I'm sorry to say, to all the meme pages and everybody that was applauding Monaco for doing this, ingenious thing. Please, if anybody wants to leave 3 strikers up when Gabriel is back, be my guest. So, I just think what we bought Marino for was to be a solid short-term option that could give us a few qualities that we've been missing, maybe some balance in the midfield, again, more strength in the duel. But I don't think he was ever going to be a player that took us over the line. But I think what he can do is just raise our floor a little bit. And I think over the weeks, you're slowly starting to see him a bit more comfortable with his surroundings. Don't forget, he's had to come up a level. I mean, Real Sociedad is not Arsenal. So on top of the normal change and the acclimatization that you'd need to do as a new player, he's had to raise himself at 28, which is not always easy. So look, it's been a stop-start 4 or 5 months. He's been injured. He came into a team that wasn't performing super well. But I think in the new year, we'll see a lot more of him. I would just like him to release the ball a little bit quickly or quicker at times. But overall, he's making positive strides.
Well, I think he's a player that we're going to need to be at the level for us to be at the level, right? So fingers crossed that this is a step in the right direction. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but happy for Eddie that he scored. I mean, I would have preferred he didn't, because I think it made the end of the game maybe more nervy than it needed to be. And credit to David Raya for the way he claimed the final cross at the end there and made things safe. But also the most predictable goal of all time. He now has 2 goals for Palace, both in this competition. But like, candidly, he kind of embarrassed Saliba. I mean, he rose higher. Saliba didn't manage the situation. Kiwior wasn't really able to drop back. I don't think it's Kiwior's man, to be fair. And it's also just an excellent leap and header from Eddie Nketiah. And like, I hope he goes on to have a very good season with Crystal Palace starting immediately after this weekend. Happy for him. And I think if he was going to score a goal in this game, getting it to make it 3-2 in a game we still won is certainly how I would have picked it. So any quick thoughts on Eddie?
Definitely. No, I mean, when I saw him and Daichi Kamada coming on, I thought, Jesus, that's a lot of narrative. The Emery killer and the former player coming to haunt his former club. That's like too much to handle for the script writers. But yeah, really, really well taken goal, actually. The header is brilliant. Yes, Kiwior maybe is not positioned the best, and Saliba, I'm not sure why he doesn't jump at all in that situation. I think there's just a bit of miscommunication and confusion between the two centre-backs, but he gets himself between them, plants a brilliant header into the corner. I mean, that's unsavable. And yeah, the pure timing of the goal did make things nervy, but I don't think Palace had a shot after that, did they? They had that one nervy moment where
look, it was really
a
wet.
cross
It was really
deflected
rainy,
off Saliba. Right. Yeah. But other than that, I was never really worried about us conceding a goal. So yeah, pleased for Eddie. It's a nice moment, and yeah, hopefully from Saturday onwards he can have a good season. I think he'll be fine. Palace had a difficult start to the season. They lost a few key players. He's been played in a weird right-sided role. Then he's been played as a kind of support striker, which I don't think is his game at all. So yeah, he'll be fine at Palace. It's been a tough start, but I don't have concerns about his quality.
And this is why football is mad, because like the XG I think is more than 2 for like 2.09 for Arsenal to 0.4 for Palace. The game ends 3-2. And against Fulham, that same XG virtually ended 1-1. Against Everton, a similar XG, we had slightly fewer, but Everton had a lot less, ended 0-0. Right? Taking your chances makes everything feel different. It really does, right? I mean, like, and I know that's so reductive and obvious. And to be fair, it is the quality of players that does that. And if you want to go to the Patreon and listen, because there's a big discussion Paul and I did on this when we broke down the Thierry Henry Sky Sports analysis about our attack. But like, it is amazing how having really good players can change the narrative around an attack, because Mohamed Salah currently accounts for 40% of all of Liverpool's goals and more than 30% of all their XG. And that's not to say they're not good or their attack isn't good. But if they just had, let's say, a bang average, decent professional instead of Salah, their attack would not look good. Now, it wouldn't look bad, but it wouldn't look like it does. And, you know, again, it goes without saying, but if you have Messi, you look better. If you have Salah, you look better, right? If you have Erling Haaland, well, you stay humble. But like, you know, for a couple of seasons, you look better. And I think that you could see it when Saka came on. You could see it when Odegaard came on. Hey, weird. More talent improves performances. Better players. Like, is Ethan Nwaneri going to be a good player? Of course he is. He's already a good player. Odegaard is a better player currently. I don't think that's controversial. And we look better when he was on. You know, and Saka is better than Sterling. Even if Sterling was effective, Saka came on and he did stuff. So, you know, when Saliba came on, we were better. Like, the level of talent is a huge component to performances. And
good players make you better, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look, this is why you come here for this next level analysis, but it is sort of my contention that Jesus is one of those players that I think there's still a player in there. And if we just discover it a bit, that will make a difference. Anyway, happy for Eddie that he got his goal and that it also didn't wind up mattering. I don't think there's much of anything else we need from this game. So I think we can just quickly touch on the draw. Do you have a preference? I will tell you mine. Not Liverpool. I don't want that. I don't want 2 games against Liverpool in January, but you know, maybe you feel differently.
I want Spurs. Because I think if we get Newcastle, it will be away. So,
It's home and away.
oh, is there two legs? Of course.
Of
How
course, that's what's
stupid.
so funny. It is such a pony cup that they
I
don't even
forgot.
play.
Yeah.
Listen, they don't even play extra time in the quarterfinals. They go straight to penalties. That's how pony it
Hmm.
is. Yet they give you two legs in the semifinal. Like that's got to go. Come on.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, especially in a calendar like this. But I would be more than happy with Spurs because I think Newcastle are a team that have given us issues over the last couple of years. I don't want to play Liverpool in a semi final, and I think Spurs. Yes, there's the narrative of them being our rivals and people hate those games at the best of times. I do as well. But also, isn't it a bit exciting to be able to play them in a semi-final and potentially knock them out? I think it would be a million times worse to have them in a final. I'd be way more nervous to have them in a final. I'd much rather have them now, where we'd have two opportunities to sort of kick them out, to knock them out. And I just don't like the option of the other two. For some reason, Newcastle, they always turn it on against us, and Liverpool, I don't want to be anywhere near them until we need to be. So for me, it's Spurs or
I
United, of course. I mean, we don't know. Maybe it could be United. I'd be happy to take them. So
It would be weird, right? Because we'd have an FA Cup tie and two League Cup ties against United in January, which would be very weird. I think the reason I don't want Spurs is those games are just very emotional, intense games, period. No matter when you're playing them, they matter, they're intense, they're emotional. And distracting, emotional, intense League Cup football in January feels like potentially dangerous. Any of the others, I mean, the Liverpool is the one I want the least, just because I think that game will demand the most and maybe lead to a situation where Mikel feels he has to go full strength in both legs. I think any of the other matchups, we will probably see somewhat rotated sides in both legs. And like the priority is to win and get through. I get it. I know people are rolling their eyes. Why do we need to rotate? It's a semifinal. I get it. But are you going to accept dropping points in the league during that time? I don't think so. We're going to have to manage our way through it. We have a big squad and we're going to have to incorporate those players. What I think Spurs could be interesting because you're going to get chances. You're going to have a chance to go attack them and get chance. It could be great for a Sterling or a Jesus because you're going to get hatfuls of hats full of chances against Spurs, and that could be good for an attack that just needs a lift. I want Liverpool to draw United. That's what I want because I think Liverpool having their rival, their biggest rival. I mean, I know Everton is the derby, but I think Liverpool United is sort of the de facto derby there. And I think Liverpool United in January, not that I think United are a risk to Liverpool particularly, but I think they would have to take those games seriously. They'd have to take us seriously. I think if they get Spurs or Newcastle, they will be much more inclined to rotate. But I think against United and Arsenal, narrative will dictate that they don't. And I still have some scars from League Cup semifinal. What was it? 2 seasons ago against Liverpool in January. I believe we had them. I think we lost Granit Xhaka to a red card that cost us points in the league. After that, I think we picked up some injuries there as well. So maybe I'm taking some bad feeling. Look, whoever it is, it's not going to be easy. None of those options are easy. I think Spurs would be agonizing but fun. United also kind of fine. Newcastle, they kind of kick the shit out of you, and they're not a fun team to play against. Liverpool, I just think it's too much intensity for my heart to take in January. So I would probably rank order them: Spurs, United, Newcastle, Liverpool. And for Liverpool, I'd rank order them in terms of what I want them to get: United, Newcastle, Spurs, Arsenal. Because at least against Newcastle, they drag you into these turgid
they're just horrible
physical
to play
affairs. They're just
against. When
horrible to
when
play
they're
against.
on it, they're horrible. They're really physical. They bring you down to their level as well, I think, and they've got some star quality that can really hurt you. So I don't want us anywhere near Newcastle in January, please.
Okay, last bit. Lineup for Palace on Saturday. Their lineup will probably be very similar, I would think.
Hmm.
Our lineup will not. I presume that Gabriel and Saliba will be able to play. That Timber will be able to play. Whether he plays right back or not will be very interesting because it depends what we feel we want to do and can do at left back. So I'm curious what you think there. Midfield, I don't know if Declan Rice is fit. I mean, he has a groin injury. I think that's pretty clear. And maybe this was keep him out of the squad and just let him get totally fit, or maybe he's just not fit at all. In which case, then I think it gets interesting because you could see Partey, Marino, and Odegaard, depending on the left back, or you could see Jorginho, Marino, and Odegaard with Partey at right back again. And then you have an up front issue. It's going to be Saka and two others. And based on how Martinelli's playing, based on how Sterling and Jesus just played, based on how Kai's playing, he's got a lot of interesting decisions. So this is the problem with a team that isn't fully clicking. The manager has to make decisions not based on, I trust all my guys and whoever I put out there is fine, but based more on, I have some players I'm not totally convinced of right now, and I don't know the right call. It feels more from uncertainty than certainty. So at least up front. So how do you expect we'll solve those couple of positions I called out as question marks?
It's really difficult because even one injury can change the whole dynamic of this team. Are we saying that Rice is out? Because I'm not sure.
I think Rice is a doubt. That's all we can say. He
Yeah.
wasn't in the team. I think he has a groin injury. I don't know too many groin injuries that heal up in like 6 days or 7 days. But maybe it's not an injury. Maybe it's more just caution, tightness. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not in this game, though.
Okay, I'll tell you what I would like to see, which is not Thomas Partey at right back. I would go David Raya, obviously, Timber right back, Saliba, Gabriel, and then Lewis Skelly. And then I would play... midfield. Yeah, I think I would like to see Rice, Marino, Odegaard again. And then I think it will be Saka, Trossard, Havertz. That's what I think will happen.
Can I love with you? I just don't love that.
That's fine. I mean, that's what I would like to see and what I think will happen as well. I wouldn't have any issue with Jesus coming in. I just don't know if that will happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a part of me, if Rice is fit, that would be curious to see Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Miles Lewis-Skelly. And by the way, we talk about Ethan Nwaneri as the superstar, and he is. He's going to be. Like, I don't think I even have a question about that. Miles Lewis-Skelly right now has shown that he can just play at the Premier League level as a starter, which kudos to him, at left back, by the way, which is not his position. But so that back four, if Rice is fit, I would be interested to see Rice, Odegaard, and Kai. And then a front three of Saka, Jesus, and Leo, or Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli, or Saka, Jesus, and Sterling. Take your pick on the left. I don't think any of them are convincing enough. I don't know that I'd want Sterling protecting Miles Lewis-Skelly, so to speak. I know that's focusing on defense, but it's part of the game. So maybe it's Martinelli who starts, fresh and raring to go. And Jesus drifts left a little bit, and Jesus and Martinelli have always had a bit of a better link up. But then Kai can make those late runs. You still have the ability to have a long out ball. You have almost a second striker with Jesus, so he has someone to riff off of. If it has to be Marino, that's fine. But I think it'd be interesting. Just some more goals in the team. Some more oomph. And the way Jesus is playing, his dribbling, I don't know. I mean, Is that crazy? That's not something Mikel has shown he's wanted to try recently, but that is, if you think about it, when we bought him, Kai was left 8 and Jesus was center forward. That was the plan. The plan has changed and maybe changed for the better, but that was the plan. And if Jesus is in form and Kai is fit, is there any reason he wouldn't go back to the plan from last summer, the summer before this?
I maybe not, but we haven't seen much of it this year. And I think the way Palace play in particular, they like to flood the midfield. So I think just having a couple of players in there, it leaves you open to being outnumbered and outmuscled. So especially with the wing backs, they obviously like to play with the wing backs as well. I just think he'll look for a bit more security in those central areas at first. Whether or not that changes or not, the game is easily changeable. But yeah, I would just worry a little bit about how much they like to flood the middle and us just being caught. But ultimately, we're playing a silly game here because nobody knows. We can never know who's fit, who's not fit, because Arteta gives away nothing. And also every week the Arsenal team is changing. So it's so difficult to gauge 11s, who's fit, who's not, where they could play. I will just stick with my opening statement and say that I don't want Thomas Partey anywhere near right back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want that either. And I think when you're picking the best of not ideal options, Miles Lewis-Skelly has shown that him at left back and Timber at right back is a better option than Timber at left back and Partey at right back, I think. And especially, if you said to me which of those two options makes us least vulnerable, I might say Partey at right back and Timber at left back. I think that might make us less vulnerable.
Especially because Ismail Assar is their danger man on the right.
Yeah. That's a great point.
I think we need to focus on ourselves and not on the opposition.
This is my point. If we concede another 0.4 XG, we just have to hope they don't get 3 or 4, 7 goals from it. But the problem hasn't been that. As I just read out from the stat earlier, we haven't conceded over 1 expected goal in like 7 years. Our issue is scoring. So I would set the team up with a focus on how we get goals, because even when we're not at full strength, we just aren't giving much away. We gave almost nothing away yesterday and conceded 2. And, that can happen, but we got the 3. Let's get 3 again this weekend. And I trust if we get 3 on Saturday, we will win. I trust that. He says after they get 3 dodgy penalties, we'll see. Okay. I think we'll find out, but we should leave it there. That's plenty for a League Cup tie against Palace and a league fixture against Palace. Hopefully that will go well. We'll have an instant reaction for you. We'll have an announcement. There may be a watch along for patrons for the Palace game. If the technology we want to use is up and running, there's a platform we're partnering with, and that platform is maybe just about ready. So there may be a watch along with Clive and myself on that platform. You'll have to watch the video, the game yourself, but the platform has some cool plugins that we'll be able to use. So we'll try to keep you updated on that. We're just syncing up to get the technology up and running. There will, of course, be a live instant reaction at full time of that. And I think we have a patron pod for you tomorrow as well. So there'll be lots of stuff, but the most important thing is that you're here and we love you. Phil, thanks for joining.
My pleasure as always.
Be sure to check out the Football Vision podcast. Phil absolutely killing it over there. A lot of fun episodes recently. You can sometimes find them on this feed, but just look for the Football Vision feed and subscribe to it. And even if you don't want to listen, subscribe to it. Come on, what are we doing? Just subscribe to the feed. The people need the feed subscribed to. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for putting up with us, our rotated squad. But we did give you the full lineup on Monday, and of course, we always love having Phil on. So thank you for being here. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Palace 0.